All right. Good morning, everybody, and welcome to our daily huddle. It is Friday as we're heading into the weekend here. Jesse Macpherson coming at you from, guess where? Anyone guess? Anyone guess what this place kind of looks like?
Utah?
Utah it is. We are here in Moab, Utah. Kind of the last little pit stop on our way home. We got to be home by tonight. So back in action, back in the house, but looking forward to our next adventure, our next trip. However, getting out there today, we had a pretty full week of information, of stuff really to kind of digest and really to download. And I want to make sure and follow up on it. And today I want to talk about implementation and execution. And we talked a little bit about it this week, but it's kind of taking it to the next level. And I said it earlier, but I'm going to say it again, and I'll probably say it a lot more times if you were listening to me for any remaining time, is that complexity is the enemy of execution. That clarity is power. Proximity is power. It's one of the reasons why I believe that these calls are so important. But the implementation of it is a whole nother ballgame, or the execution of activities, of information, how we digest information and how we go out there and produce it and or do it. And I want to talk about that here today because I think it's going to help us to start implementing some of the things that we're learning, because there are different stages of learning inside of our business and inside of our experience. All right. Some of you guys have heard about these stages, right? So I want you to write these down. The first stage is unconscious incompetence. Unconscious incompetence. This is where you don't even know that you don't even know. Like, you're just completely unaware. All right. So I'll kind of give an example. It's like an infant. When you put an infant inside of a vehicle, the infant doesn't know that it's in a vehicle. It's unconsciously incompetent. It doesn't have any idea. It doesn't know where we got there. We don't know how we got there. We don't know where we're going. Then the second phase of learning is where you become consciously incompetent, right? This is now where you become conscious of the fact that you don't know something. This is when it's transitioned from I don't even know that I don't even know to now I know that I don't know, which is a good place to be. That's what they say, like knowing is half the battle. Right? So then the next piece after conscious competence, or I'm sorry, conscious incompetence is where you become consciously competent. And how you really move the line from being unconsciously incompetent to being competent is through spaced repetition. All right? Spaced repetition is the mother of all skill. Spaced repetition is the mother of all skill. Write this down. Spaced repetition. If you think about growing up, how we learn languages, how we learn things, we repeated them, we did them multiple times. That's how we became competent at things, is by multiple attempts. And one of the things that's really challenging I have found, which is that one of the reasons why they say it's easier to teach children languages, is because they're not as afraid of messing up or failing. And as we get older, it's like something we bring on as if it's going to be detrimental to us, or what are people going to think, and all those different things, right? So, but the conscious competence through spaced repetition, we're going to talk about that for a second, but let's go to the fourth. The fourth phase is where you become, all right, unconsciously competent. Now, this is where I want all of you to be in your business. And I want you to be there as quickly as possible. Unconsciously competent means you no longer need to think about it. You just do it. It's almost like a habit. And these stages of competence that you're going to go through, from stage one, I don't even know what I don't even know, to now I know there's things I don't know, to now I've learned those things, to now I don't even have to think about it. A good example of that would be driving a car. As a baby, you don't even know. And then there comes to a point where you realize, oh, I'm getting in something. This is a something, and we are going a somewhere, and there's this car, but I don't know how to drive the car, but I realize that I'm in a car. And then if you want to learn, like most of us, I want to start driving. I want to have that freedom. I want to have that flexibility. What do I need to do? So what I need to do at this point is I need to learn. So I start maybe studying a little bit, but let's be honest. Most people do not read the entire owner's manual on their car before they get in that thing ripping 80 miles an hour down the freeway, right? And so they don't even know if their lug nuts are loose. They don't even know what a lug nut is. They don't know anything. They just know, I want to get somewhere, and this is a vehicle to help me get there. So most people, what they do is they learn the basics. They learn enough just to get going, right? But what's going to happen is, in the very beginning of driving a car, did anyone here learn how to drive on a stick shift on the manual? Did anybody learn? Did you guys remember? All right. So I grew up in the mountains, so we had a lot of forest fires. So we learned to drive when we were young. I mean, very young. In fact, driving around on the farm was, the 12 years old, that was kind of just what you did, right? So, but I learned on a stick shift. And for those of you guys that have learned on stick shift, you know what I'm talking about, where you're figuring it out, all right? You're like, is third, how do I get to reverse? And then you got the clutch. God forbid you park on a hill, right? So, and I remember getting parking. I was in San Francisco and I was on a hill and there was this guy pulled up right behind me and I literally went out the window. I was like, dude, I'm new to stick shift. And he backed up like, swear to God, like 400 feet. But there's that learning period. And even like merging onto the freeway, if you guys remember the kind of the first times merging onto the freeway and you're like, how does this thing work? Even your blinker, you're like, is my left blinker up? Is my left blinker down? Those are conscious things that you're thinking about where you're becoming competent in them. But when you do them for a period of time, you don't even think about them anymore, right? So like parallel parking for some of you hasn't become unconsciously competent yet. And maybe never will be, right? You're like, nope, not even going to get there with that one. But there becomes a time where you don't think about, how do I get to third gear? How do I get to fourth gear? It just because you get so competent at it unconsciously that you now can multitask while you're doing something that used to require all of your attention. And becoming unconscious competent. And what happens is when you hear something enough, and what happens, interesting enough, when you repeat something enough. So I want you to write this down. Repetition is the mother of all skill. And you're like, you already told me to write that down. I know. It's because I'm repeating you writing it down. The more you write something down, think about when you had to write down words and when you had to learn language. This is how we learn these things, is repetition, but also spoken, when you speak it. And a good example of how we become unconsciously competent at things is music, or even commercials. I don't know if you guys have ever remember some of these commercials from back in the day. See if you can kind of repeat after me and know what's coming next. My baloney has a first name. Come on. My baloney has a second name. It's ER. Right? It was the only way I knew how to spell baloney growing up in school, because Oscar Mayer had a way with BOLOGNA. Got it, right? Now, what's interesting, some of you guys are like, what is he talking about? And other ones of you are like, you know every lyric to that jingle, that song, and hasn't been on in what, 20 years, 30 years, right? So, and we could go to different generations, right? I grew up and I'm a 1982 kid and I love basketball. So we were watching commercials off the bleachers, off the billboard, off the backboard, nothing but net. That's right. You guys know that. And it hasn't been on for how long, right? And, even like shows, you guys remember, there's a story of a, and it's ingrained in us, typically because we heard it again and again and again and again. But what happens is when we repeat something, it starts to move into a level of consciousness. Here's what I want. I want your business to be completely unconsciously competent. You don't even think about it. What do I say to somebody? You know what to say to somebody so well that you can multitask while you're doing it, right? You're doing the laundry, you're out on a run, because you don't have to think about it. I remember one of my first mentors, we were in the car, he was passed out. He straight up answered a phone call, did his story, fell back asleep. And I asked him afterwards, I was like, did you know you did that? He was like, I thought I woke up. He literally dreamt through a three-way phone call, slept through it, didn't even realize he wasn't consciously awake because he did it so many times. So what does that mean? That means that no matter what we're going to do, exposures, presentations, phone calls, trainings, is if we're going to become to that beautiful state of unconscious competence that I wish everyone to be in, it's going to require you to get competent at it. And how you get competent at it is through spaced repetition, is doing it a lot. Now, best tip that I can talk to you guys about for execution is teaching. So I want to talk to you guys about this here real quick, right? Who am I teaching? Who am I teaching? Who am I mentoring? Who am I passing this information on to? The goal here is not to become great. It's to how many people can you help become great? How can you pass it on? How can you pay it forward? How can you be somebody that's a kind of catch and give? So it's like catch and release. The goal here is not to catch this information just for your own personal gain. The goal is to catch it and give it away as quickly as possible. And what you'll find is that the people that are the teachers are the ones that know the information the best because they're teachers. So I want each and every one of you right now is to be listening to these trainings, not as a student, but as a teacher, this information. And the number one thing I could give you as a tip or an advice about how do you execute and how do you absorb information is, as soon as you learn it, to teach it immediately. Just the fact that you have to regurgitate it, just the fact that you have to bring it out of you again. When I do live events, I do these all the time. We call them lightning rounds. And what we'll do is, when we've had about 3 hours of conversation or training, we'll get into pairs, and I'll have you go for a minute and teach the person next to you everything that you learned in the last hour. That's going to recall your reticulator system. It's going to reactivate it. So that way it's going to dive deeper into your level of thought and your consciousness. So who are you teaching? So this week we did a lot of things, and I talked about goal setting. We talked about dreams. We talked about how to, obviously the training from yesterday. So, but here's what I found is, unless you can teach it to someone else, very few bits of the information will remain. So here's what I want you to do. This week, I want you to be a teacher. I want you to find somebody. They don't even have to be in Seacret. Do it on your spouse, right? So do it on your kids. Teach your kids this goal setting stuff that we learned here today, right? So I want you to do a training to do, if you're like, well, I don't have kids, I don't have a spouse. Well, train your dog. I don't care, right? So you're like, seriously? Yes. Put your stuffed animals out there and just, do a little training to your stuffed animals, right? Just the fact that you're saying it out loud. And what you're going to notice is, as you're saying these things, you're going to go, oh man, I might not know that as well as I thought I did. And that's the experience of the execution that's going to be really important, of taking things from these levels of consciousness. So unconsciously incompetent, don't even know what I don't even know. Consciously incompetent, then conscious competent, then unconsciously competent. Those are the 4 things. And through that spaced repetition, it really is where we're going to be able to do this. So training, teaching, executing. All right. So what do I need to execute? So right now in your notes, I want you to write down, what do I need to execute on this week? What do I need to implement this week? What are some of the things this weekend? All right. So good example. I heard him talk about that dream list. Did I actually do it? Because the difference between hearing and knowing, the difference between...
Jesse, you're really breaking up. Can't hear you. We can't hear you, Jesse.
He lost connection. He'll be back.
Hello, come back.
He's still showing as connected as the host, so I imagine he's out there somewhere.
He is, and it's
Plus,
like,
I think all of us would have dropped out.
Yeah.
If his connection dropped completely, the whole call would have dropped.
Hello.
Here he is.
No, can't hear me.
You're breaking. You're kind of coming in and out, Jesse. We can hear you a little bit now.
How about now? Can you hear me?
There you go. Now you're back.
Hey, all right. Sorry about that, guys. So I, pray for the service gods. I got to get a better piece of equipment out here for my service. That's for sure. So anyway, as I was wrapping up, I have no idea where I left you guys off, but I said some amazing things. I wish you guys could have heard it. But really, what it really boils down to is, the one thing that I think is really important is, don't let your learning lead to knowledge. If you let your learning lead to knowledge, you'll become a fool. Let your learning lead to action. When your learning leads to action, you become unstoppable. It's the action and the fear of going through that. So what does that mean? So when you know there's something that you need to be doing and you're not doing it, you're not executing on it, you're procrastinating on it. So a lot of times, there's just not enough time, there's not enough this, there's not enough that. That's BS, all right? There's always enough time for the things that we make a priority in our lives, right? But first off, second off is I want you to start asking yourself, what am I avoiding and why am I avoiding it? Why am I avoiding this? Why is this maybe scary for me? Why am I fearful of this? What am I afraid of? Nothing. I'm not afraid of anything. If you were afraid of something, what might it be? Right? So what we want to do is start diving into our own psychology here a little bit and start looking at, okay, what are some of these blind spots? And these blind spots are going to be showing up in an area where you're resisting things that you know are helpful, right? So where am I resisting where I know, man, I know if I did that, it would be beneficial for me. If I did that, it would be powerful for me. And I'm literally holding myself back. And some of you, you can actually almost feel the pull on it. And that's what we're trying to figure out is, what are we scared of? What are we willing to kind of give up in order to go up? What are we willing to sacrifice? What are we willing to let go of? And today, I'll finish with a quick story for you guys, just because it's Friday and we're heading into the weekend. So story time. I'll never forget one of the most important moments in my career when I kind of started my path of personal growth and development and in this industry of network marketing. And I signed up in May of 2002, failed miserably, felt like just flat on my face. And what ended up happening is they said, I got to go to this convention. And I was like, I don't need to get motivated. I just need to get paid. Like, this doesn't make sense. I got to spend more money. But they said, you got to go, you got to go, you got to go. Well, fine. So anyway, I convinced a couple of my friends to drive with me from Los Angeles to the convention was in Las Vegas. And in Las Vegas, the unique part was we all ended up staying in one room because we didn't pay like peanut butter and jelly sandwiches because we couldn't afford anything. And I'll never forget the first training day. I sat in a kind of an overflow section because they couldn't even fit everyone in the convention in the same hall. And I sat there, and this guy went up on stage. His name is Jim Stovall. And Jim Stovall went blind in his life, later in his life. So he's a blind guy, and he's walking around on stage, and I'm mesmerized because like, this guy's going to fall off the stage. Because obviously he like mapped it before or something, I don't know. But this is, I just turned 20 years old. This is my first time really, I think, seeing more of a development speaker. Somebody then just didn't focus on what you need to do. He said, you need to focus on who you need to become. Success isn't a set of actions that you do. It's the person you become and how you attract it. And I'll never forget, he said, one of the main reasons why people fail. And now I'm very interested. He said, the main reason, people fail is that they don't understand most people.
You're gone again.
I'll never forget. This is November 2002 in Las Vegas.
No, I can't hear. I can't hear anything anymore.
Jesse just said happy Friday and he'd get back with everybody on Monday. So he just sent a message on our team chat. So meeting officially over. Have a great weekend, everybody.
Bye, everybody. Have a great weekend.